King.
Yes, Satan? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You sounded like someone else.
The Gospel of Luke and John.
I have exorcised the demons. This house is clear.
KCAA 1050 AM, 102.3 FM and 106.5 FM, and online at kcaaradio.com. This is the Gospel of Luke and John. My name is Luke King, your atheist pastor, alongside everyone's favorite Orthodox priest, Father John Reed.
And you can follow us on Facebook at the Gospel of Luke and John, or on Instagram at Luke John Gospel. That's Luke John Gospel. You can submit your questions there. Our fabulous producer, Tammy, will be monitoring that and will get your questions to us. Fabulous. Or you can call in. Where can they call in, Luke?
They can call it at 909-792-KCAA, 909-792-5222.
That's right. I have trouble with the KCAA. I'm dyslexic and I get the AAs wrong. Anyhow, tonight we have a big show tonight. And if you're tuning in just now, this is going to be big, important information. As you know, this has been a heavy week in the United States of America. We've had some real issues with the DACA problems, with our president saying things that were quite unpresidential. Not that that's new, because it's not. But also, it's just some real sad stuff taking place in the city of Paris, where we had that family where these poor children were held captive in their own home, 13 kids. And this is, again, fundamentalism gone wrong, because they were claiming to be fundamentalist Christians and homeschooling and just terrorizing these poor children. Gosh.
Yeah, it really, it is one of those things of, it's challenging to stay informed and aware, yet also not just be totally brought down and destroyed by the things that you hear on a daily basis, because it just seems like the news that we get and the things that we hear and the things that our politicians are saying, and it just seems like it's always getting worse.
But the good thing is I have finally figured out how to tell when President Trump is lying.
When he's awake.
No, his lips move.
Oh, or his thumbs are busy on Twitter.
Oh,
that's
goodness.
That's when the real gold. That's when the real gold comes out. Is probably when he's right after he's had his morning coffee and he's in on the porcelain throne on Twitter. That's probably when that happens.
Speaking about Morning Joe, you have some great clips.
That was
this
a
week.
beautiful segue, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic.
Thank you. I used my best mug for that.
Yeah, actually, before we get to the Morning Joe clip, let's start off with one of the, this is huge right now on, I guess it's always huge, but this is making a recurrence now that repeal and replacing Obamacare couldn't happen, and now that the tax bill has gone. Kind of the next big promise that Trump made and the next big agenda issue is immigration.
Yes.
And he, got slowed down, started to phase out DACA, and now we're coming up on a government shutdown and yet another budget crisis, which in the U.S. I think we're always in a budget crisis. I think there's never, it's kind of like my own finances. I'm kind of always in a budget crisis. It just depends on the degree of crisis with which I'm dealing with.
Welcome to show business, baby.
But there's now we're seeing these stories of, we were told that, no, we're only going to work on the criminals. We're only going to work on the bad hombres, and now there are these reports and these stories of people who came here when they were younger. They are too old for DACA, and now they're being, removed from the United States. They're being deported, and these weren't the people that were supposed to be deported.
Right, and even this guy, Jorge, it just broke my heart to see him being torn apart from his family. He's done nothing wrong. He's reported in exactly as he's supposed to. He pays his taxes exactly as he's supposed to. He's not taking anybody's job away. He's not CEO of some big company.
Right. So Jorge Garcia was one of the big stories of the week. And if you're not exactly sure, or if you're kind of a little bit behind on the Jorge Garcia story, here's a little bit about that.
A Detroit area man has been taken from his wife and children, ordered to leave the United States because he's an undocumented immigrant, brought here from Mexico when he was just 10 years old.
That was the scene yesterday at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport when Jorge Garcia had to leave his wife and two children. Jorge does not qualify to stay here under DACA rules, which protects young, undocumented immigrants from being deported. He is 39 years old and misses the cutoff age by a year.
The big tragedy in that particular situation is, this is a guy that should have been covered under DACA, but I guess he shouldn't have been. I mean, he didn't qualify in terms of years, but he's one of those people who he's not a criminal. He didn't do anything wrong. In fact, they tried to. His wife is an American citizen, so they tried to do it the legal way. And according to his wife, because of their lawyer's incompetency.
They got scammed,
and it's I haven't seen, and maybe I'm just behind on the news. I haven't seen a detailed description of what that issue was. I don't know if any of the news agencies are digging into kind of what that legal loophole or what that legal mistake was, but it just goes to show that this guy tried to do it the right way. He tried to be one of the he didn't in that news clip that we just showed. They talk about how the Department of Homeland Security or Immigration and Customs Enforcement said that his crime was being brought here when he was 10 years old.
Well, and more than that, I did a little research on this case because it really bothered me what was going on. And he did get scammed by this attorney. Now, one of the problems that a lot of these people are dealing with who are trying to become legal is there are a lot of scam artists out there. He filed the paperwork that he was supposed to, but this attorney did not give him the court date. He didn't know he had a court date, so he didn't show up for it, and that's why he received an order for deportation. And they were trying to sort that out. Once they found out that he was supposed to show up for a court date he was never given by his attorney, they should at least let him rectify that because it wasn't by his own fault. But even this week, in some of their sweeps, they're taking people who are citizens of the United States with proper identification and still locking them up as though they're supposed to be deported, and some of them are staying in jail 2-3 months, losing their jobs and everything. It's like a countrywide Guantanamo Bay.
Well, and this is already problematic, but with Mr. President coming up and saying the things that he says and calling countries the things that he calls them, and just kind of his history of the words that he said, and the fact that the Republicans in Congress don't push back against what he says. They don't come out and say, we don't agree with what the president's saying. They tiptoe and they tap dance around it. And on MSNBC's Morning Joe, Eugene Robinson was on. He is a Washington Post opinion writer, and he wrote an article called "Republicans, Do You Want a Race-Based Immigration System Too?" And here's Mika Brzezinski talking a little bit about what he wrote in his article.
President Trump's intent could not be more explicit. He wants immigration policies that admit white people and shut the door to black and brown people. That is pure racism. And the Republican Party, which traces its heritage to the Abraham Lincoln era, must decide whether to go along. Silly me. The GOP seems to have made its choice, judging by the weaselly response from most of the Republicans who were in the Oval Office on Thursday when Trump made vile and nakedly racist remarks. They deserve to be enshrined in a hall of shame. There is nothing inherently racist about the free market conservatism that Republicans cherish and advocate, but there is everything racist about the white, ethnocentric theory of American identity that Trump champions with remarkable frankness. That is what the immigration battle is really about.
Now, Senator Kamala Harris had a few things to say to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nielsen. And so let's listen to that.
When we are having discussions about whether the people of Norway, and I will use your words, Madam Secretary, and you spoke about how they were referred to as, by contrast to the people of Africa and the various countries, the 54 countries of Africa and Haiti, and we speak of them, and you've spoke of them, according to the president, as the people of Norway. Well, they work very hard. The inference being the people of the 54 states of Africa and Haiti do not. That is a fair inference. And you run the Department of Homeland Security, and when you say you don't know if Norway is predominantly white, when asked by a member of the United States Senate. That causes me concern about your ability to understand the scope of your responsibilities and the impact of your words, much less the policies that you promulgate in that very important department.
Senator Cory Booker had a few things to say as well, and it's interesting that when he was talking to the Homeland Security Secretary, now he's being accused by Fox News of mansplaining and talking down to her. So this
well, that's a reliable source.
Well, absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, they didn't say anything. I mean, they didn't say anything about Kamala Harris and about what she's saying.
Right.
They didn't say anything about that. They didn't say anything about how if she's being condescending or anything like that. But Cory Booker comes on and he says something, and the administration, they don't really have a great way to answer a lot of these questions and kind of defend their position, because it's really kind of an indefensible position. And just to prove that, this is Secretary Nielsen, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, responding to Senator Harris.
Yes. It's not a fair inference at all to say that my comments about Norway were in contrast to any other country. What I was describing was the president's views upon meeting with the prime minister, and what I was quoting was what he was told in meeting with the Norwegian delegation. That's what he was repeating. That were words that they said that he repeated that then I repeated. It was not meant to be in contrast.
So I said, what he heard from the guy at the thing with the place.
Well, first of all, let me say a good shout out to Senator Harris. Nicely done. Tell them where it is. You know, I can't believe people are still asking if the president is racist or not. If you can't figure that out by now, the only thing that I can refer you to is a word in a dictionary called idiot.
This is one of those things where you're kind of like, Grandpa's racist, and nobody wants to admit Grandpa's racist, but it's kind of there, and you just, it's hard to admit that, because some people, they love Grandpa.
Well, and I grew up with some of that. I shouldn't say grew up, but I inherited some of that. God bless my dad, God rest his soul. He was a hardcore redneck. He was a country western musician. Not that all country western musicians are that way.
Hey, I like country.
I do too. And there's an element of certain parts that are hardcore right-wing, and he and my stepmom were some of the sweetest bigots you ever met. I wasn't raised with them, and I love them dearly, but they would say some of the most outrageous things, and they didn't even know it was racist.
If they love you, they'll help you, but if you're not part of it, it's very tribal. Like that whole environment is very tribal, where if you are one of us, if you are and sometimes it's not even if you look like us. I mean, it's if you're part of the tribe, or if one of the tribe knows you, or one of the tribe loves you, or one of the tribe accepts you, then you're in. But if you're out, you're out. It is a very us-them kind of a deal.
Well, when we come back from the break, I sure would like to talk a little bit about how anti-Christian this is, since we claim to be a country of Christian principles, which read the Treaty of Tripoli by Thomas Jefferson. There's my dyslexia. And you'll find out, no, we were not founded on religious principles. We are a secular nation, thank God, and or whoever you want to thank, Luke. But when we come back, let's talk a little bit about how this is truly anti-Christian.
My name's Luke King. When I left the church, I had no idea where to turn. I had lost my entire worldview. I knew deep down that it was possible to be a secular person and still add value to the lives of others. I just had no idea how to live that way. I read books, I searched for tips and ideas. I wanted to ask for advice, but I didn't even know who to ask. I became frustrated because it seemed like all the resources available were out to prove religion wrong, and that just wasn't my concern. My concern was, how do I live my best life today? Since I couldn't find the guidance I was searching for, I started the Your Atheist Pastor Show to document my journey. I love people. I still want to do good in this world. The only difference is that now I do it without God. I'd love for you to come on this journey with me. Just hop on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, anywhere podcasts can be found, and type in Your Atheist Pastor. That's Your Atheist Pastor. Welcome to church.
Hello there! Are you tired of handcrafted, award-winning beer in a cozy, family-friendly atmosphere? Of course you're not! You're not a dummy! Sanctum Brewing Company is all these things at once. Nestled in beautiful Pomona, California, Sanctum is independently owned and operated, making delectable poetry by the pint for your enjoyment, bringing you a family-friendly, dog-friendly atmosphere. Enjoy the wonderful views at Sanctum Brewing Company, including warehouses, mountains, and train tracks. Also, we have a pallet wood wall. Yes, we were doing it before it was cool. We're not that hard to find on Google Maps, or Apple Maps, or MapQuest. Yes, it's still a thing. Sanctum Brewing Company, home to the world's largest selection of 2x4 furniture.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
But since you've been gone, I can't breathe for the first time. I'm so moving on, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get
KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, and online, kcaaradio.com. It's the Gospel of Luke and John. Luke King alongside Father John Reed. If you want to give us a call, 909-792-5222, 909-792-KCAA. Questions, comments, concerns, critiques, all that fun stuff.
I guess I should turn my microphone on. Let's
put the
try
mic
that.
on.
How's that?
There it is.
I'm going.
Hey, it's the first time we've done that, though. I mean, to be fair, this is like week 12. That's the first time we've ever had the mic off.
Well, I was thinking about AT&T, and I just want to know, can you hear me now? And so,
isn't that Verizon?
But I don't know. You're talking to a dyslexic. What letter come first? But seriously, if all that's going on right now, if you're not mad as hell, I want to know what drugs you're taking.
And you're not going to take it anymore. Didn't somebody say that?
Yeah. But really, if this doesn't bother you, there is something seriously wrong, and I want some of what you're taking because...
Well, one of the major challenges with immigration is that it's a more nuanced discussion than just everybody in or nobody in.
Right.
There's more to it than that. And the problem is the... one side of the argument, let's say the left, will take the dreamer valedictorian and say this is why we need to have as open borders as possible.
Sure.
And the right will take the 9/11 terrorists and say this is why no one should ever come into the country unless they're from Norway or a non-S-hole country.
Right.
And it's... And we get on this, we were talking about this earlier this week, about this intense polarization that we have. Because it's all or nothing, because it's open or wall, it's hard to even have this discussion, because if you say something like, well, how should we determine who comes in, you're racist.
Yeah, and there has to be a middle ground, but also, just to raise a hand here in our friendly studio, how many here would like to be a migrant farmer? Anybody?
Oh, no,
Anybody?
thank you.
That's hard work. I'm going to be doing a funeral for somebody on Saturday who was a migrant farmer, and they work hard. They finally had to quit, and they wound up working with the railway and also doing working with the Air Force, so they were citizens. But they had to give it up because picking the cotton was tearing their hands up so much that they couldn't even pick up a cup of coffee, for heaven's sake.
I think one of the interesting things for some of us who are in the non-religious community is we see some of those, it goes back to the Roy Moore thing when it's these certain values of charity and compassion and welcoming that are alleged in the Bible, but it seems like the hardcore religious folks are the ones that are the loudest sometimes against letting people in, against bringing in refuge, against offering refuge to some people.
Which goes against our rabbi, Yeshua, because he was about welcoming the stranger, helping the poor, feeding those who are hungry. Everything that this argument is about in the current context goes against everything that Jesus taught. And, we have to face this. If we're going to say that we're Christians, which means people who follow Jesus, not just people who believe in Jesus, people who follow Jesus, do what Jesus said to do, we have to welcome people. We have to love our enemies. Oh my goodness, did I just say that?
Yeah, that doesn't go over well with the with the America crowd.
No, parts of America crowd, but you know what? There's also a lot of people fighting for this. This weekend there's going to be another women's march, and it's going to be huge, and that's beautiful. I'll tell you why, because there's a real dueling of consciousness, and you talked about just a moment ago. You just alluded to it. And that's what's really happening right now. We're at a place in our growing up as a country, because we're a very young country, where we're going to have to decide who we are and what we're about. And the consciousness that's dueling is one saying, no, we want to stay in the dark area, the shadows, and the other part is saying, no, let's let in some light. And to be honest with you, I think the light's going to win. And the fact that so many people are going to show up in L.A. for this women's march, I'm all for them. Keep on keeping on. Claremont, I'm glad I live in that city, because they're doing a lot of very progressive stuff to make it really clear that we have a direction we want to take this country. And it's one that welcomes everyone, because as you and I were talking about before we went on air, unless you're a Native American, your family came here as immigrants, and it's no longer okay to say, I got mine, screw you, you're going to be left out.
Right, and I think that the challenge for those who, and the challenge is, if someone pushes back on that, if someone says, okay, I understand, I want to let people in, I wouldn't want to leave a refugee or someone who really needs to come in, I wouldn't want them to leave them out in the cold, but some people say, hey, we have our own issues here already. We have our own problems that are going on. So it's like a freeway. If everybody can get on the freeway, and anybody who wants to get on the freeway can get on the freeway, and there's no control, there's no paradigm,
laws? Right.
There's no laws, there's none of that to get on the freeway, then we have a traffic jam. But if people who are on the freeway don't ever let anybody get on the freeway, then we're going to have a traffic jam, all the way up, and there's going to be accidents all the way up the on-ramp. And then if you get on the freeway but you don't follow the laws, you cause an accident and you back up traffic that way. And it's more nuanced, I think, than just we need to be open and accepting to everybody, or nobody can come in.
Right.
I think there needs, the DACA thing, absolutely. There's no reason ever for anyone who was brought into this country as a child, under the age of 18 as a minor.
Right.
I think anybody that came in under 18 as a minor should be in.
Well, I agree. And
there should be a road to get there.
Yes, there should be a pathway to citizenship. But I also want to dispel something. Sometimes the ignorance of this president just, it's all I can take. This lottery program, we don't reach into a bowl and pull out names. First of all, it's a long process. You're well vetted. You have to have a good criminal record. That means you haven't been a criminal. I want to clarify that for those who wondered. Oh,
you need to have a solid criminal record of arson, burglary.
No, that's to go into politics. It's a long, drawn-out process, and it's no one grabbing a handful of names out of a bowl and picking out the worst. Where this guy comes up with this stuff just shows how ignorant he is about the system that he's supposed to be the president of. And he doesn't have any curiosity. That book, Fire and Fury, is brought out from several sources, and no one's dispelled it yet, that he has no curiosity to find out what the truth is.
Well, they just go on, and the problem... And this is what drives me nuts about presidential elections, is like Congress isn't doing anything. And I understand that the president has to eventually sign this bill.
Right.
And I think Mitch McConnell said earlier today, well, we would like to give the president a bill if we knew what kind of bill he wanted.
That he would sign.
Right. But why don't... They say, well, we don't want to waste our time. But they're there to make laws. Like, they are there. And this is the thing about executive orders. Like, we can't be signing new executive orders every time a president comes in, because then a new president comes in and goes, I don't like that. It's just like, you have a king for 20 years, and then a new king comes in and says, I don't like what the old king did. I mean, that's why we have the system we have. And it's frustrating for me, because, listen, we know Grandpa's a racist. Okay, we know he's a racist, and the best way to call him out on that is for Congress, the Republican-controlled House and Senate, who could do whatever they want.
Right.
If they can't even get their crew on board. So if they can do whatever they want to do, send it to racist Grandpa, and then if he turns it down, then there's something to talk about. But then Congress could at least say, we did our job, but nobody wants to do that. They sit on their hands and go, well, if we just knew what the president wanted. He wants a wall, and he wants to be happy and play golf. Like, that's what he wants.
Well, just on
or
that,
to get impeached.
On the other side of that, and to quote Bernie Sanders, let me be clear. And where I'm going with that is, if the Democrats, who have all the power at this moment, do not fight for DACA, I'm done with them. I'm done with them.
They've said that is a hill that they want to die on. I mean, that's they are at that point where it's like, we'll shut the government down over DACA, which, I mean,
actually, it's the Republicans shutting down the government on that one. But yeah, if they're not willing to come together on this, and one of the problems, and I heard somebody say it so well, and I wish I could remember who it was, that the Republicans have a gift for pulling the feet out of the jaws of victory.
Oh, well, I mean, they were so close to getting a deal.
Yes.
When that big, with that big glad handing video summit that they had about immigration, where the president was like, well, it's about love. We just need an immigration system that's about love and about compassion. I was like, yes, that sounds incredible. And then
go for it.
And then he said his s-hole comment, and then it's like he takes there, like, he was almost there. Like, they were even talking about having a deal on the wall. I mean, he had something in his hands, and he lost it.
Well, even John Kelly saying, well, when he made that promise about the wall, he wasn't educated on it yet, and now he's in office, he's been educated on it, and that's not how he feels about it. And now Trump's throwing him under the bus, saying, oh no, I still mean this, and I Mexico's going to pay for it. Ain't happening, white boy.
Well, and that's why it's infuriating. It's infuriating for those of us who follow this, who hope that something happens, because I think most of us in the country would prefer a functioning government over what we have now.
You want a functioning government? Get the corporate money out. You got to undo Citizens United, and I'm going to plug a place that is working that way, called Justice Democrats and Wolfpack.com. These are candidates that have vowed to not take any corporate money. They're doing their entire campaign on little donations by people like you and me, and one of them is going up against Dianne Feinstein, and she's going to I think she's going to win.
Now that would be that, and I love that. I love that there are principled folks that are out there to run for office, and I think that's something that needs to be done. The problem is that we still, in the meantime, like where we're at now is, like, we have an election, people get put into office, and they say they're going to change something, and they spend 2 years bickering about it, and they spend a year bickering about it, then they spend 6 months playing it safe because they don't want to lose the midterm election, then we have an election cycle, then we win the midterms, then for about another year they bicker, and now we've got a presidential election coming up. So that campaign should start in about a year, because now it's not about governing, and it's not about getting the country and making it better. It's about winning elections. Like winning an election, as soon as you're done with it, then you go to win another election.
Well, that's because of all the corporate money. And really what they're doing is they're calling their corporate sponsors and asking, what is it you really want? So they're not working for us. Tom Hartman said something that I absolutely agree with, that they should do like NASCAR. And they should wear jumpsuits with all the patches of all their financial sponsors, so you know who they're really working for.
I agree. That would be wonderful. But this discussion of immigration, I mean, there's still work to be done, and there's still things that have been. So let's say we get a deal on DACA. I mean, now we need to talk about refugee crisis, and we still need an immigration system that's fair, but that I mean, is it wrong to ask people, and is it wrong to ask the immigration system to put America first? I mean, that's a question I think that people are asking, is like, how do we manage compassion with with kind of keeping the nation together? It's like a family who would be like, well, we want to give to a charitable organization, but we have to keep food on the table. How do you manage those things?
Well, you have to get out of either or and get into yes and.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, that border wall is so crazy. And I'll tell you why. Most of the people that are undocumented have overstayed visas. They're already here, but they don't come over the border, most of them. They come by airliner.
Right, and this is what I mean. Like, we get bogged down with racist grandpa and the border wall when there's that's gonna be my new moniker for the president, racist grandpa.
Let's make a T-shirt on that one.
Because everybody needs a racist grandpa, and the whole country has one. But we get bogged down in those things. We've got racist grandpa and the border wall, and that detracts from the greater issue. I mean, that detracts from what do we do with DACA and the Dreamers? What do we do for folks? How do we manage bringing in refugees? How do we support people in assimilating to American culture? I mean, there's all those questions that we can't answer because somebody's tweeting. And because we're yelling about a border wall and saying that Mexico is going to pay for it, when there's refugees that need to be brought in, when there are people who have worked hard, who want to move because they believe that they can have a better life here, and we're too busy talking about what stupid antics some politician put out there.
Well, also
this week,
they've also decided that the tweets are policy. That's now the ruling that if he tweets it, that's considered policy set out by the president. Now, that doesn't make it law. That's policy.
Right.
They're two different things. But there's another thing that we're not talking about that's getting lost in this, and that's we still haven't funded the CHIP program. So we're letting these children. So the two things that the Democrats are supposed to be working on right now is DACA and funding CHIP, because all these kids are about to lose all their health insurance. That's not okay. And same with seniors. It's just not okay.
And these are, it's maddening sometimes, especially when it comes to, seniors losing health coverage and things like that. A lot of these people that are losing their health coverage, not the kids, but a lot of these seniors who are losing the health coverage voted for racist grandpa.
Well, that's right. Well, they didn't read the tax bill either, because what they didn't realize is that an entitlement program, first of all, reason it's called entitlement is because you paid for it already. That's why you're entitled to it. And because of these tax cuts that they've made, next year, I believe it's $75 billion is going to be taken from Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, unless they change the law. That's the pay-as-you-go that they already instituted in law 8 years ago.
Well, but by then the midterms will be over, so there's about a 3-month governing window in there where they could actually get something done before they start the presidential elections. So maybe they'll flip that over at that point.
That's a pretty big maybe from your lips to God's ears. First of all, we have to come back to compassion. There is a way to do both, to take care of refugees, immigrants, and also take care of our border problem, but we have to use some brains, which I think is becoming a real rare commodity, and we have to start getting out of who's right and into what's right. And you and I talk about that a whole lot, because that's really where progress gets made, is when we get out of who's right and into what's right. We're talking about people. They're people, and they're our brothers and sisters. That's universal. And so what it takes is for good people to stand up and say, this is what we demand of our politicians. If you're sitting down and being quiet about this, that's not the way to go. The only thing evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing.
When we come back from the break, we want to talk a little bit about what was discovered here, about a day ago in Paris, and these 13 kids who, were essentially held, one of them for 29 years of his entire life in captivity by his parents. And just kind of, speaking of compassion, showing some compassion for those folks and just kind of, what is going on out there. So we'll talk about that when we come back from the break.
Hello there. Are you tired of handcrafted, award-winning beer in a cozy, family-friendly atmosphere? Of course you're not. You're not a dummy. Sanctum Brewing Company is all these things at once. Nestled in beautiful Pomona, California, Sanctum is independently owned and operated, making delectable poetry by the pint for your enjoyment, bringing you a family-friendly, dog-friendly atmosphere. Enjoy the wonderful views at Sanctum Brewing Company, including warehouses, mountains, and train tracks. Also, we have a pallet wood wall. Yes, we were doing it before it was cool. We're not that hard to find on Google Maps, or Apple Maps, or MapQuest. Yes, it's still a thing. Sanctum Brewing Company. There will be snacks.
My name's Luke King. When I left the church, I had no idea where to turn. I lost my entire worldview. I knew deep down that it was possible to be a secular person and still add value to the lives of others. I just had no idea how to live that way. I read books, I searched for tips and ideas. I wanted to ask for advice, but I didn't even know who to ask. I became frustrated because it seemed like all the resources available were out to prove religion wrong, and that just wasn't my concern. My concern was, how do I live my best life today? Since I couldn't find the guidance I was searching for, I started the Your Atheist Pastor Show to document my journey. I love people. I still want to do good in this world. The only difference is that now I do it without God. I'd love for you to come on this journey with me. Just hop on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, anywhere podcasts can be found, and type in Your Atheist Pastor. That's Your Atheist Pastor. Welcome to church. The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
I want to talk about me, want to talk about I, want to talk about number one. Oh my, me, my, what I think, what I like, what I know, what I want, what I see. I like talking about you usually, but occasionally I want to talk about me.
KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and online at kcaaradio.com. It's the Gospel of Luke and John. I'm Luke King, your atheist pastor, alongside everyone's favorite Orthodox priest, Father John Reed.
I've been wearing my Orthodox underwear tonight. I got so excited about it, I forgot to turn my mic on again. What's wrong with me tonight?
What does an Orthodox pair of underwear look like?
It's stripe-free.
It's stripe-free?
Stripe-free.
So is there like a collar on the waistband? Are they like black with like a white waistband?
They're tighty-whitey.
I wasn't sure if that was like the Mormon underwear or if that's
a little bit better. Well, someone told me they wanted me to be brief at a service recently. I said, oh, too bad I wore boxers.
Are there special like bishop or ornamental boxer briefs or something like that you wear for special occasions?
No, I'm just well cuddled. I like to pamper myself. I'm kind of dependable at this age.
Oh my, kind of dependable.
That would have been a good time to call some of our listeners. That would have been a real good time to call.
Oh, what, to ask about your underwear?
No, just to change the subject. Hey, speaking of underwear and clothing, this family that we're going to talk about, the County of Riverside and the University Health System.
Man, that was a great seg. You had like 2 for 2 on segues tonight. That was beautiful. Yeah. So we'll get into the story in a bit, but there's a need. There's a big need for clothes and things to help out these 13 kids that were basically held in what some have called a religious compound, essentially, and just abused, tortured. I mean, the parents are being charged, but for all kinds of different things. But if you're interested in helping out, the Riverside University Health Center Foundation set up a fund to accept donations, and the Chamber of Commerce in Riverside, the Corona Chamber of Commerce and the Riverside University Health System are gathering donations to help the 13 people, actually, because some of them aren't children, held captive by their parents in Paris. Now, there is a warning out there for any GoFundMe pages that you might see or any online fundraising are fake. So this is according to ABC7, and they are putting out there, do not give to the GoFundMe pages, do not give to any of the internet fundraisers. If you're going to give to anything, give to the Corona Chamber of Commerce and the Riverside University Health System, and you can find those if you go to their websites.
And also, for the 29-year-old, this is how starved he was. His waist size is, I believe, 27. That's I'm sorry, I have trouble holding back the tears. And the fact that people didn't, when they say, if you see something, say something, this would have been a good place to do it. And the grandparents of these children said they were so shocked that this was happening for the fact that it was a good Christian home. Folks, that's not Christianity. That's just craziness. That's what's called a cult. Please don't mistake that for Christianity.
Well, one of the neighbors is quoted as saying, I thought it was a religious compound over there. They were weird and homeschooled the kids and kept them away from everybody and wouldn't say names. I just thought maybe they were a little out there. But some of the neighbors are even saying they didn't see any signs of abuse. So it is one of those, and nobody wants to be that person that calls and is wrong. But in this particular case, it seems like it would have been beneficial if somebody had to have seen something. I mean,
well, yeah,
people are nosy out here in California.
When children are that malnourished, and some of the neighbors, in watching some of the different news coverage of this, some of the neighbors talked about how skinny these children were. Well, if you see that, obviously something's wrong. You could at least have a safety check, let me just put it out there. People, if you see this in your neighborhood, call Child Protective Services and just have them make a health and welfare check. You can do it anonymously. It's worth it. Again, the only thing evil needs to be successful is for good people to do nothing. And I get that nobody wanted to be a bad guy, but you know what? You could have been a hero.
So if you're unfamiliar with this story, a couple in Paris are charged with beating, strangling, shackling their children for years, and the abuse allegedly escalated from neglect to torture over time. David Turpin and Louise Turpin were each charged with multiple felony counts of torture, child abuse of dependent adults, and false imprisonment. That's according to Riverside County District Attorney Michael Hestrin. David Turpin was also charged with one count of lewd act on a child by force. If convicted, they face up to 94 years to life in prison. They were arrested this week on suspicion of torture and child endangerment.
And the child, by the way, at the lewd act was done, was his daughter, one of his daughters who's under 15, I believe.
And the crazy thing is about this story, and I remember when I first heard it, the oldest child, if you want to call him a child, was 29. I mean, imagine the mental and physical and emotional abuse that you have to put someone through to when they're 29 years old. I mean, shoot, that's 3 years older than me, younger than me. And it's like, I can't imagine. I mean, some of these kids said they never seen a pill. They didn't know what a police officer looked like. I mean,
Right.
they've never seen the outside world.
Right.
It's tragic.
Yeah, they didn't even know what medicine was, and it's scary. And the 29-year-old did take a couple classes at community college, but the mother would go and wait outside the classroom, so he had no way of talking to somebody alone about what was going on.
According to prosecutors, the parents would go buy food for themselves, but not allow the children to eat it. And there's one instance where they're alleging that they would buy apple pies and set them in front of the kids and not let them eat. The kids were barely allowed to bathe and had not seen a doctor in 4 years. None of them had ever been to the dentist. And if they washed their hands above their wrist, they were accused of playing with water and would be chained up.
Right. They were only allowed to bathe twice a year.
And they apparently there was one time where someone tried to escape, and they used to use rope, and so one of the children escaped, and then they decided to go to chains and shackles because those are more prudent.
There's a movie called The Girl Next Door that's taken from a true story that's like this. And this stuff's hard for me to watch. It really is. These are children, people. And, you know, Pat Benatar wrote a song back in the 80s, Hell is for Children. And this is what she was talking about. And we can do better, and we have to do better. If you claim to follow Christ Jesus, please step up, do something. These kids, this is just the beginning. They're going to need all of us as a community to step up to the plate and not just offer them clothing. Please do offer the clothing and whatever you can give. But more than that, offer them friendship. They're going to have to go through a lot of PTSD debriefment. That's post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of them probably have Stockholm Syndrome and a lot of other mental disease from all this. And so if we really want to do something as a community, let's give these kids a lot of love. It wasn't their fault. They are the victims here, and they really need us, and so do so many other children.
And interestingly enough, I mean, they lived in Texas before they moved to California. They were in Texas 17 years before they moved to California. I mean, it's just it's mind-boggling to think. You know, this is stuff that you kind of think you hear about from the backwoods. You know, I mean, you don't think like when I think of crazy stories like this, I don't think about, oh yeah, Southern California, Riverside County. I don't think about those things. I think you know, sorry for anybody that's listening in like the backwoods of, you know, North or South Carolina, but that's kind of what you think. You think about this old tattered shack in the backwoods that nobody knows about. So to think that, you know, this is kind of like a tract home in Riverside County, it's mind-boggling to think that no one saw these things.
Well, I saw the photos of the first house they lived in Texas, where there were scratch marks on the back of a door. There was different stains. There's fecal matter stains on the carpet, blood stains on the carpet, and the people who bought the house, you know, windows were broken out and such, and people who bought that house just thought they had a lot of animals. They didn't realize that all this was from the children, that the blood stains were from the children, the fecal matter in the carpet was from the children, and so were the scratch marks on the back of the doors. Boy, that's it's hard just to talk about.
So if you want to donate to the family, if you want to donate to the kids, just go to the Corona Chamber of Commerce. You can go to mychamber.org. And that should get you to the Corona Chamber of Commerce page. There are donations for the Paris abuse victims, and there's all kinds of different things. You can click register now. You can send funds. There are ways to get clothing. There are hygiene items. There's a list. There's a lot of things crossed off of that list. So it looks like what they probably need now more than anything are funds, because the clothing and the hygiene needs are currently met. So monetary donations are what are needed at this time. So if you go to mychamber.org or, you know, Google Corona Chamber of Commerce, something like that, that will come up, and you will be able to make a monetary donation to the family.
And I know there's a lot of really good people that listen to this program, and we're appealing to you at this time. Please get involved. I know that you're wanting to do something, and if you're feeling helpless, this is a way to stop feeling helpless. You can really make a difference here.
Well, and it's one of those opportunities where it really isn't going to matter how much you give, whether you give $1, $5. I mean, the community, what I love about the Southern California community is that people come together for stuff like this all the time. I mean, they come together, they give their money. I mean, you hear about the charity drives during Christmas time. You hear about how people reach out to families of fallen officers, of victims of the fires, of victims of floods. I mean, just all kinds of things, landslide. And so we have such a caring community, which is a good thing. And these kids are going to need a lot of care.
And I know a few of our listeners, not a whole bunch of them, but I know a few of you. And I know your hearts. And you're very fine people, the ones that I do know. So I want to thank you in advance because I know you're going to do something. I just know you are. We all are. I'm not just saying you. I'm saying we. And, this is what this program's about, is making a difference. We're not just here to fill air. We're here because we care about what's going on in this community. We love the communities we're in. So let's come together as a real family and show these kids what love really looks like.
I saw a great story out of Texas. This is probably maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a school in Texas that was going to do a father, basically like a day with dad breakfast, and they reached out to the community because they were anticipating that some of the kids wouldn't have dads to come to the event.
Nice.
So they reached out on social media and they said, if you are a male in the community and you would like to come and support these kids, let us know. They had over 600 people reach out to those things. Now you might think, what does that have to do with what we just talked about? Absolutely nothing. It was just a really good story, because one of the things we have to remember when we talk about these things, there's a lot of negative stuff to look at. There's a lot of bad things going on out there, but there are also some really good things happening.
Which makes me want to give a shout out to a dear friend, Steve Arnett. Why do I want to talk about Steve Arnett? Because of the very story you talked about. I mentioned, you and I have talked about the fact I met my dad 27 years ago. He was gone before I was 1 year of age. And the YMCA, when I was a child, had a program called the Big Brother Program. And Steve Arnett, he was a member of the Air Force, and we're still in contact on Facebook. He was my immediate brother and my big brother in his program. And he would go out of his way on his days off to pick us up and take us places. He's just a good man, and tried to show us what it meant to be a good man. He took us out to March Air Force Base to meet another friend of his who was an SP, that's a security police, and we got to ride around on some of the Air Force equipment. But there's some good programs out there, and and the YMCA really did a good job on that. So I just want to give a shout out to some of those people. Pat Flack was the director at the time, and my brother and I used to sell butter toffee peanuts every summer to go to Camp Oaks and Big Bear. You may not know this, but your co-host here holds the world's record of selling butter toffee peanuts. My brother and I are in the record books. We sold 1,500 cans of butter toffee peanuts in 2 weeks so we can go to camp.
Are you really?
Really.
That's
We were in the newspaper and everything, man. So you wonder why I'm so nuts. I used to sell them.
And now you're selling books. Your book. Specifically,
nice.
Close your eyes so you can. Hey, you've inspired me. And here's the thing: if you want some good news, if you want something that really shows you a different perspective than what a lot of people have, in terms of we talk all the time about some of these conservative Christian folks who, even though John and I have completely different religious beliefs, we both have
united on this.
We both are very united against the fundamentalist folks. But a lot of people have never heard a different side of the story. They've never heard a different, more open and accepting way to read the biblical and the Christian story. And it's a great way to, John's a priest, so there's some validity to the fact that you can hold the beliefs that he has, you can view the system the way he views it, and still stay within that faith. Because there are a lot of people out there that want to hold on to their faith, but see a problem with the way that some of the fundamentalist folks talk about it. And what you do in that book is give people another way to view that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. And, one last shout out, because we're coming to the end of this show. And that's just my good friend Nikki at Claremont Pharmacy, who, we finally got my diabetes in check. And she's a big part of that because she's taking good care of me. So I just want to say, Nikki, if you're listening, thank you. And if you need a good pharmacist in City of Claremont Pharmacy, and it looks like we've used up a whole another hour.
We did. So we
got 1 minute.
So and we need to thank one person in particular with this last minute. We need to thank our board op Carlos. See,
hey,
I wrote
he's
it down.
The man.
I got it down on the bottom of the page. It says thank Carlos. I actually remembered it this week. I also want to thank Tammy and Gabby for being here and supporting us and giving us high fives and smiles when we say ridiculous things. So you all have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.
And thank you for listening.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Do you want exposure for your business or organization? Check out Digital Network Advertising. Digital Network Advertising is where businesses display your ad inside their building. You can choose your marketing sites or jump on the DNA system and advertise with all participants. Your slide holds the virtual billboard for 14 seconds and is displayed 3 times an hour. It's a novel way to be seen, be discovered, and to be remembered. Digital Network Advertising with networks in Redlands and Yucaipa. Call 909-222-9293 for introductory pricing. That's 909-222-9293.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
And a good evening to everybody out there tonight, coming to you from deep in the heart of the Wild West and pumping out loud and crystal clear from sea to shining sea and all the way from pole to free.